This week on Animal Miracles, a young woman collapses and falls into a coma. And when her husband most needs support, a mysterious dog appears to comfort him. But will this angel be able to save his wife?
And the phone rang. My heart sank. I knew it was a call saying that she passed on.
Then, a first date begins badly when Anne's dog Drum senses danger and tries to warn her. Drum's instincts prove true, and the date quickly goes from bad to worse. But first, a thief gets away before police arrive. He would be home free, except that the best police dog on the force arrives soon after.
Keno, search.
They catch up to the thief.
Please stop and stand still.
But this takedown would be Keno's toughest ever. Stay tuned. Animal Miracles is next.
We all sleep soundly at night, knowing that in cities across North America, we're protected by some of the finest police organizations on earth. Well, here's the story of the often unsung heroes of law enforcement, the Canine Detachment, who, without regard for their own safety, perform miracles every day. Police Constable John Garrett knows his life is on the line every day he goes to work, and he goes anyway. But does his canine partner, Keno, understand the risks? If he didn't before, he would find out on this day in early 1997.
We were on regular patrol and received a call. We weren't that far away.
PDS 8 responding to break and enter.
Any call can be dangerous, but Constable Garrett knew he could always trust his dog. Keno boasted the highest number of arrests of all his canine colleagues on the Toronto police force.
I usually get kidded at work that if he knew how to drive, I'd be out of a job. He has performed above and beyond what other dogs have.
John's quiet afternoon shift was shattered when a burglar broke into an eyewear store full of expensive frames. John and Keno were on the scene in a matter of minutes, but it was too late. The thief was gone. John didn't know who he was looking for. All he knew was the direction in which the man had run.
Witness said she saw a male suspect heading west on foot.
John knew Keno was the only one who could lead them to the suspect.
We began to go down the street in the direction that the witness had told us to see if we could pick up a track.
Keno, search.
Police dogs are trained to pick up the freshest human scent on the ground. John hoped Keno could find the only one that mattered.
Good boy.
Concrete is the most difficult surface to track on, and Keno was confused by the many competing smells. But then, suddenly, he had it.
I knew that we had a really good track just by the way he was pulling, and if we were going to catch up, we had to move fairly quickly. Adrenaline is pumping, and we're moving at a fairly quick pace.
John still didn't know where his dog was leading him, but years of working with the shepherd had taught John to trust Keno's keen sense of smell.
A suspect that is running after doing a crime, their adrenaline is high. They actually give off more scent than a normal person would. The closer we get, the stronger he wants to pull because the scent is now even stronger.
As they emerged from a maze of parking lots and back alleys, John finally saw someone up ahead.
I still wasn't quite sure if this was the suspect because we didn't have a description of him at all.
Stop, please, I want to talk to you.
But instead of stopping, the man fled.
Stop, or I'll release the dog.
I yelled again,
Stop.
"Police, I want to talk to you."
Keno, take him.
Then he broke into a full run.
Keno had found his man, and he knew what he had to do. The thief was desperate to escape, and Keno was closing fast. But just as Keno was about to take him down, the unthinkable happened.
I don't believe that he saw a car coming, and I don't believe the person that was driving the car saw him because it happened that fast. I could hear the hit. I knew he'd been hit by the car.
By the time the officers got to the dog, the suspect had disappeared.
I'll go set up a roadblock.
John turned all his attention to his injured colleague.
Thought number one was, can't be serious because, you know, I have to take him home for my kids. I know it would be devastating for my kids.
The sound of Keno being hit by the car reverberated through John's mind. He feared the worst.
I couldn't tell whether he was hit in his head or in the body. It was difficult to see where exactly he had been hit.
Even though he had gotten away, the officers had at least caught a glimpse of the suspect, and that led to an amazing stroke of luck. A taxi caught in the officer's roadblock carried a male passenger whose jacket looked very familiar.
Police, please step out of the vehicle.
The man casually got out of the car, but when the officer got close,
He pushed her backwards. Keno saw this too, and he went into handler protection mode.
suddenly Keno's pain was secondary to his desire to serve. He wanted to get his man and wasn't about to be held back.
I thought that the injuries couldn't be that bad if he wanted to continue on like this. When he goes into handler protection mode, he's actually more aggressive than if he was sent after somebody because he's protecting me or he's protecting another officer. He wanted to do his job and complete what he set out to do.
Stop and stand still!
Ignoring his injuries, Keno flew into action.
Keno, out!
Once the officers had the suspect in handcuffs, John saw something that made his heart sink.
I noticed that the suspect had a lot of blood on his arm, and I knew that he hadn't apprehended him that hard. I knew that it was coming from Keno's mouth and not the suspect's arm.
With the thief safely under arrest, John rushed Keno to the hospital, praying that he would recover.
It's a miracle that he wasn't hurt more seriously and that he was able to go above and beyond what you would expect.
Keno had risen to his greatest challenge, pushing himself past all pain to protect and to serve. Keno did make a full recovery and is still at work today. And even though he is now the oldest police dog on the force, he still gets the most arrests every year.
I don't think he realizes, you know, how good he is.
What's bad guys?
He's willing to work and willing to please, and I'm sure that he's doing it all for me.
Coming up next.
I didn't hear anything. I didn't smell anything. And there was just an immediate explosion. And I was on fire.
See how a little stray dog and this woman would give each other the strength to turn their own misfortune into a blessing for countless others.
When everything goes bad in our lives, it's often impossible to imagine that things are going to get better. When a freak explosion leaves a woman terribly burned and facing a lifetime of pain, she more than anyone needs a miracle, and she finds one in the form of a little angel named Sweetheart. 5 years ago, Barbara Reyes was on top of the world.
I just had graduated from Loma Linda University as an occupational therapist, and I was celebrating that, which was quite an accomplishment. I was single at the time, and my daughter and I went to Mexico to enjoy a weekend of fun in the sun. And when we got there, the hotels were filled, and they happened to have a motorhome that was available for rent.
Barbara asked the hotel owner to turn the hot water heater on. No one realized the propane hose had been disconnected, and the RV filled with flammable gas.
I didn't hear anything. I didn't smell anything. And there was just an immediate explosion. And I was on fire.
The lower half of Barbara's body was so badly burned, she almost lost her life. At the hospital, in her delirium, she saw a vision.
The most miraculous thing about this is right when they were getting ready to put me to sleep for the surgery, I looked up at the clock and it was 4 o'clock, and I saw 8 angels around me.
Barbara survived, but faced 2 nightmarish months in the hospital and years of extreme pain and rehabilitation. She fell into a deep depression. She couldn't see how her life could be full of anything other than agony. And then one day, at home in Apple Valley, California, she read a newspaper story about a stray dog that had been brutally attacked.
I saw her article in the paper that she was maliciously burned by 2 teenagers.
The innocent stray had been doused with gasoline by 2 teenagers and set on fire.
And I just started streaming down tears.
Barbara knew that this poor little dog needed her. Veterinarian Rick Morey, who had agreed to treat the stray for free, remembers when he first saw her.
When I first thought it was probably just a little burn until she came in and realized it was a lot more than just that. Couldn't believe it really happened, that somebody would actually do this.
It was unlikely she would survive, but Dr. Morey saw something in the little dog that told him she just might make it, and which earned her the name Sweetheart.
Mostly with just her attitude, because she was still wagging her tail. I mean, she was just happy to be there with somebody.
There you go, sweetheart.
Many people called to adopt her, and some even sent money to help pay for her care. But Barbara showed up in person.
They probably thought I was nuts, but I said, I've got to have this dog. And they said, well, ma'am, there's like 100 people that have called in that want her to. And I said, but I'm a burn survivor and I want this dog. I'll help her. I'll do anything to help her.
Dr. Morey was skeptical, so Barbara realized she would have to show him how much this meant to her. Barbara's daughter, Lauren, remembers her mother's resolve.
When my mom first took me in there, she was like, we're going to help that dog, Lauren. All those people on the waiting list are just giving them money. We're going to get her by helping her.
Every day for 2 hours after work, Barbara and Lauren would go to the vet and tend to Sweetheart's recovery.
I felt so bad for her. She couldn't lay down. She was in so much pain. She had to sit there on her burns. She would just wag her tail and try and lick you, and her little lips were burnt, so it would kind of hurt.
I would daily ask the vet, what do you think her prognosis is? Is she going to make it? And they never could promise anything because she was really deeply burned, and there was a very high risk for infection.
As Sweetheart slowly healed, the most amazing thing was happening to Barbara.
I have a lot of pain in my legs at times when there's a lot of stress, but a lot of moments when working on this dog, my legs would actually tingle with a very good feeling. I can't quite explain it, but I would actually feel better when I was working on her.
After months of intense therapy, the day arrived when Sweetheart was ready to be adopted.
They said, Barbara, we had a meeting today and we'd like to talk to you and Lauren. And I started crying. And I didn't know if it was going to be yes, we could have the dog, or no, we couldn't.
The answer was yes, and Sweetheart went home with Barbara. It was then that she realized how much Sweetheart had helped her own recovery. Barbara now saw that Sweetheart had a calling.
How you doing?
Maybe she could help other burn victims.
This is Sweetheart. My name is Charlie.
Charlie Brunoli, a highly respected dog trainer and handler, had heard about Sweetheart's story, and he offered to train her without charge.
I knew right away, just from looking at her, and just those brief moments, that she would make a wonderful therapy dog.
Sweetheart was a quick study, and soon she and Charlie were walking the halls of hospitals and burn units, touching many other lives with her wagging tail and amazing story of recovery.
If she can go through, you know, the burn treatment, I know I can. I want to thank you for bringing her.
Thank you. Thank you. She made a big impact on my life. Her ability to not only forgive, but to still have that good attitude and to trust people and to be very loving, all of that was just very inspirational to me.
Sweetheart now helps dozens of burn victims find the hope and inspiration that Barbara found.
I just thought that there was this big drastic change and that my mom was burned and she's going to be burned forever, and I didn't know something good was going to happen with it, but it did.
And Sweetheart, now she gets in return the love and attention she always believed we humans are capable of giving.
I think that in her own way, Sweetheart is an angel. And that's the way I look at it.
I feel that I was given a lot in life by God, and I feel very, very fortunate to have myself, my legs, my daughter. And in adopting Sweetheart, I want to help people that have been in that much pain and help them see that they can go on in life and they can be happy, just like Sweetheart.
Up next, a first date goes terribly wrong. Anne's dog can hear her struggle, but he's locked inside and there's nothing he can do. Or is there?
No matter if you're 15 or 50, a first date can be nerve-wracking. The worst part is that sometimes our first impressions aren't that accurate. Well, in our next story, a dog named Drum develops a miraculous ability to sense a good date from a bad one, from a real dog. As a busy single mom, Anne Fillmore was studying for 2 PhDs while consulting from her home in Eugene, Oregon on the behavior of hostages and their captors. Her schedule rarely allowed time for dating, so her most reliable companion was her dog, Drum.
He was my best friend. People who own dogs throughout their life, they will have a dog, one dog, who will be the dog that you remember all your life. The one that matches your personality, who's there for you, and that was Drum.
But there was one man who caught Anne's eye.
I met a gentleman at one of the World Affairs Council meetings. He was dressed well, very European, very much a gentleman, and I appreciated that. I was used to being very respected for my work, and he invited me out, and I said yes.
Oh, thank you, that's gorgeous. Come on in.
Anne didn't know the man well at all, but she felt safe with him and looked forward to her date.
Get my coat.
It would be an evening out. We would go to dinner, and that would be that.
When the man arrived, Drum made his own assessment of the situation and let it be known what he thought.
Drum had come out to check him out, and Drum was sniffing his feet. They looked like those expensive handmade Italian shoes, the shiny black ones. I thought for sure he was going to lift his leg on this man's feet, and I was so embarrassed. And at that point, he put his behind flat on this man's feet.
Anne figured Drum was jealous.
That's my dog, Drum. I'm sorry, I don't know what's wrong with him today.
I was so embarrassed for this man. He was trying to be a gentleman, and here was this dog, firmly planted with his rear end sitting on this man's feet. The only way we would have gotten out of the house is that I had to pull this dog off of this guy.
Anne dismissed the dog's actions and set off with her debonair date to enjoy the evening at a restaurant near her home.
Started out nicely. We had a good waiter. We had a lovely dinner, good meal. It was a very good restaurant.
So, dinner?
And the guy started drinking. The moment things began to really get unpleasant is when the bottle of wine was finished.
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
And he was obviously showing signs of inebriation. He was beginning to slur his words.
Only when I'm in the company of someone as beautiful as you.
I had seen this before, and I knew what was coming, and I really was not comfortable. I offered to drive home, which he didn't appreciate.
I insist.
I get very uncomfortable when I'm with somebody who's been drinking.
Unacceptable.
And he convinced me that he would be okay, sort of pulled himself together.
Not a problem. I never have problems with that.
By now, Anne realized that she had made a terrible mistake, and the situation was only going to get worse.
I made it very clear that we were going straight home, which we did. By now it was dark. And it was not that far a drive. I was very tense. I wanted the drive to be over. I wanted to be home.
Like a nervous parent, Drum had been anxious all evening.
I was very relieved to be home. I wanted out, and I was reaching for the door, and at that point he clicked the locks on the door shut. All I could think is, now it's coming, because he was really coming on to me.
No, I'm not interested in doing anything. I want to thank you for dinner. It was very nice, but
As the man turned frighteningly aggressive, Anne's dog could hear her yelling and struggling, but Drum was locked in the house. What could he do? We'll be right back after this. Animal Miracles will continue. When Anne Fillmore accepted a first date, she was embarrassed when her dog Drum begged her not to go. But when her date got drunk and later locked her in his car outside her home, she wished she had taken Drum's advice. As the man became increasingly aggressive, Anne fought him off as best she could. Drum could hear her distress, but what could he do?
I was really angry, and I'm really shouting at him, saying, no! Back off, get off.
Drum jumped at the door, repeatedly chewing and pawing the knobs. Miraculously, he got it open and charged.
All of a sudden, whap, up against the driver's side. I could see Drum right up against the window and the claws down the side of the car. And the man was furious.
Get away from me!
So he unlocks the doors. I jump out.
Get away from me! Dog, I have nothing for you. Oh.
I sort of grab up Drum. And he runs with me.
Crazy dog!
And the guy just stands there, just furious, and he's shouting at us. And we go inside. I just shut the door, and I could hear him drive off.
Anne had barely escaped from a very dangerous situation, and the horror of what could have happened began to sink in.
I was really angry and really disappointed, and I think it was about that time that the fear set in. And I began to shake, and I knew then what could have happened.
Slowly, Anne began to realize the miracle of what Drum had done. He had sensed the true nature of this man from the beginning and had very clearly told her what he thought.
I began to realize that there had been a signal, that this dog knew about this guy.
But even more astounding was Drum's ability to get the door open.
I noticed that the door had bite marks on it. That he had managed to get it open was really amazing.
Anne credits Drum with having a sixth sense about people, and from that night on, she paid close attention to his cues.
When he liked someone, he would roll halfway and then he would be laying there with his tummy up. But mostly it would be just sitting there with this big grin on his face and maybe wanting to shake hands. If he sat on the guy's feet, then I'd instantly get a headache. I mean, it was that clear.
For 13 years, Drum was Anne's companion, chaperone, and savior.
He thought he was the man of the house. He was there. He was my best friend. He was my hero.
Up next, wild Mustangs are tamed by inmates at this Nevada prison. As the horses change, so do the inmates.
It's like a person, they want to be loved. You know, it's like any animal, they just want to be loved. Show them love, the love will come back to you in return.
Historically, horses may be the most important animal in Nevada. Horses played a central role in shaping this Wild West state, first with Native Americans and later with the arrival of European settlers. Today, however, a group of Nevada horses are changing lives again in new and miraculous ways. Early in the year 2000, Dennis Dodd was convicted of selling drugs. Now he's doing time at a medium security prison near Carson City, Nevada. He had a hard time adjusting to his substantial sentence.
I was mad and bitter and hurt at the whole situation, because this is like the most time I ever did in just like one whop. Just lay down on you 4 years, like, huh? I'm like, by the time I finish this sentence, I'll be maybe like 43 or 44.
He had no hope and no future beyond finding his place in the prison's social hierarchy.
You get put in here, it's like, okay, your self-esteem is down low. You got your attitude on, because, you know, you're in here with a bunch of men. It's like, okay, who's trying to play kingpin, or, you know, who's trying to be the bigger man? I just kind of kept to myself and, you know, just held it in, you know.
Slowly, Dennis realized that the only way for him to deal with his years in prison was to keep busy.
Come on, put me to work so I can go ahead and do my time, you know. And then the horse program came in.
Not far from the prison, wild horses still roam the valleys beneath Nevada's snow-capped Virginia mountains. But as urban development reduces their grazing lands, the wild herds must be thinned or they won't survive. Paul Iverson is the director of Nevada's Department of Agriculture.
It is very important that we maintain a healthy, stable horse population. So many people like to see the wild horses. It's part of our tradition, it's part of our heritage.
So a number of the wild horses are captured and sent to the Warm Springs Correctional Center, where an innovative program was developed to tame them. Robin Bates is the warden.
The state wants to ensure that every horse is adopted. Inmates working under the supervision of a professional horse trainer take horses from a completely wild state to a condition where they're safe to adopt. Dennis was selected for the program based upon his interest, and most importantly, though, he has an excellent conduct record.
Dennis initially thought it would just be something to pass the time more quickly.
So it's like jump in there and eat up most of my days in that way. Next thing you know, I'll be walking out of this place.
The opportunity to tame wild horses was exciting, but at first, a little intimidating.
But the first time it was like, I'm scared heck of these things, you know, like, man, I ain't never been this close to a horse, but, you know, it's like, kind of like, it's a nervous type of thing when you first mess with a horse.
The thing that a wild horse will do, it will develop your patience. Wild horses can be extremely dangerous. These are animals that will kick, they'll bite, they fight.
The inmates in the program have to work very hard. They begin their day at 7 in the morning.
Everybody grabs a shovel or a rake or something like that, goes rake out their stalls, and then we feed the horses, and then basically we start our training. You want the horse to know that you're his friend. So you go through a method of putting your hands on him so the horse gets familiar with you, you know, or just get familiar with people, period.
Slowly, Dennis came to feel that he had something in common with these animals.
Well, they're kind of like free spirit animals, really. They depend on themselves, and it's more like they get trapped like we do. Like we come to jail, the horses come to jail.
There are analogies that you can make between an inmate and the horse. In fact, the name that we've given to the program is WILD. It's an acronym that means Wild Horses and Inmates in Life Development. The inmates and the horses are learning how to survive in this world.
By training the horses, the men in turn learn how to trust and reach out, perhaps for the first time in their lives.
It's like teaching a little kid, you know, showing them like, hey, okay, we're gonna teach you how to be kind, you know. It's like a person, they want to be loved. You know, it's like any animal, they just want to be loved. Show them love, and they'll return the love, and the love will come back to you in return.
Stop him now.
Michael Horrigan, a horse trainer for over 25 years, mentors the inmates.
Right hand.
He's seen a remarkable change in Dennis.
That's it. That's it.
Dennis has been in the program approximately 6 months. And something he's gone from being very withdrawn, very quiet, to very charismatic. He brings the morale of the whole group out there up.
Today, Dennis is training his third horse for adoption, and he's named this Mustang Keiki, which means little boy.
It's like a good sensation when you feel that, okay, I accomplished something. Like Keiki, right now, I'm at the point to where I'm saddle breaking him. It's a good warm feeling once you look at him, okay, like, hey, I taught this horse how to do this, I taught this horse how to do that.
Dennis has a deep bond with this little horse.
It's more getting to know yourself, really. Because you look at it, these horses get adopted out, and it's like maybe a piece of you leaving with this horse. It's like your child grows up, you know, he goes off to college.
The transformation is nothing short of miraculous. Through teaching, the inmates learn that they might be able to do something special when they leave prison.
One of the most difficult things for inmates to confront upon release is finding employment. This program has great potential for employable skills at horse farms and training stables. It's a very big business, and there is a shortage of skilled horse trainers.
This is the direction I want to go in. I want to get out here to, you know, possibly, hopefully, train horses.
And the program means just as much to the other participants.
Yeah, this is the greatest thing I've ever done in prison. I'm sorry I'm in prison, but I'm glad I got an opportunity to learn something new. It's something that I enjoy doing. It's something that I want to do when I get out of here.
It's amazing, that's all I can say. I never expected I could have an opportunity like this in prison, but it's a good thing. It really is.
Working with wild horses has given Dennis a newfound faith in himself, a faith he hopes other people will recognize and return, just like the horses do.
They sound like we probably took something from society, but if we're starting to give back to society by training these animals, and like we do with the animals, give them a chance, you know, to prove themselves. You know, because we're in here, we're not all bad people.
Next, when Shelley Greenwood falls into a coma, a beautiful dog appears to comfort her husband. But every night, the dog vanishes.
And the back was completely fenced. There was no way out of the backyard.
Is there an answer to this mystery? And is there hope for Shelley?
They said it would take a miracle to pull her through.
You mentioned the word angel, and each of us sees a different image, both personal and profound. We may never have scientific proof that angels are among us, but for the family in our next story, there is no doubt. They believe they owe much to a small miracle who ventured into their backyard during their darkest hour. Brendan and Shelley Greenwood lived an idyllic life on a farm in Riverside, California, until one day in 1987.
And the one thing that Shelley loved, and she's always been an animal person. Horses were her life.
Shelley had been riding bareback when she felt her neck crack. She returned to the stable in pain.
I noticed some kind of achiness, and then it just started getting worse. I kept telling myself, though, that there can't be anything wrong. Well, nothing happened. You didn't fall. You didn't, what could be wrong?
After Shelley put her horse in its stall, the pain became unbearable. She suddenly realized she had to call 911 immediately.
I tried to talk and I couldn't. I went into convulsions.
Then Shelley collapsed, unable to move, her consciousness fading. The 911 operator traced the call, and by the time Brendan was contacted at work, Shelley was already at the hospital.
She was completely comatose with absolutely no reaction. She just laid there there was nothing.
She had suffered a massive aneurysm. A blood vessel under her skull was hemorrhaging, and her brain was being crushed.
I asked him, is she okay or what's going to happen? And he pulled me aside and he said, I'm sorry, son, but she may not make it through the night.
Your situation is very volatile. I want you to prepare yourself.
Brendan stayed the night, and Shelley's condition didn't improve.
She was critical, totally unresponsive. They could not detect any brain activity.
He returned home late the next day in a deep depression. There on his doorstep was a strange dog he had never seen before.
What are you doing here?
And he just looked at me like, I belong here.
You're a real beauty.
And I said, well, you better get on home, wherever you belong, and he didn't move. He just stayed there.
Must belong to somebody. You better go home.
So I opened up the front door, and he just walked in like he owned the place. He put his head right on my knee, and I started petting him. And it was kind of what I needed at the time.
Numb with grief, Brendan had to take care of the farm. The dog became his constant companion. Except at night, when Brendan noticed some mysterious habits.
It was really, really bizarre. He would want out, and the back was completely fenced. There was no way out of the backyard. And I would put him out, and then 5, 10, 15 minutes later, I'd go looking, and he'd be gone. I'd check everywhere. And then the next morning, I got up, opened the front door to go get the newspaper, and he was sitting there waiting for me. And he just walked back into the house like he'd been there the whole time.
Over the following weeks, Brendan spent countless hours at the hospital, but Shelley remained in a deep coma. When he had to face the hours at home, all he had was the dog.
Here you have a dog that I could talk to. He would listen, and he was always there. He kind of knew how I felt.
Trying to remain hopeful, Brendan named the dog Lucky. Together, they did what they could to encourage Shelley.
I used to get up in the mornings, and I would record as I went out and fed the animals. He would bark in the mornings, and the chickens. And I recorded all that, and then I would take that and I'd play it to her.
For the first time, there was a slight response.
I took it as a sign that she was still there, that she could hear, and she was trying to come back out of whatever void that she was in.
From then on, Brendan played the Lucky tape every time he came to see Shelley.
Hello.
But just as Brendan was feeling hopeful about Shelley's progress, he got a devastating call. Shelley had blood poisoning.
I'll be there right away.
At that point, the neurosurgeon and the doctor that was there gave me no hope at all. They said it would take a miracle to pull her through. I went home fully expecting any time during the night that I'd get the phone call that she didn't make it.
That night, Lucky did not leave.
He got on the end of the bed and he just laid there with me. It was a very long night.
In the morning, Lucky and Brendan followed their usual routine.
We fed the animals again, and I came in, and the phone rang. My heart sank. I knew that it was a call saying that she passed on. And then I picked it up, and it was the neurosurgeon, and he said, you need to get down to the hospital. He said, I can't explain it. Nobody knows how she did it, but she pulled through. She's out of the coma. She's awake. He said she pulled off a miracle. He said, you need to get down here right away.
I'll be right there.
Over the next several weeks, Shelley grew progressively stronger until she was well enough to return home.
The first thing I want to see is the animals and the dog that I had been told about, the new dog.
He kind of like looked at me and said, okay, my part's over, now I'm hers. And he stayed with her. He was more or less very attached. He became very attached to her at that point.
I felt love from this dog, felt protected. He felt wise to me. I mean, he's like a shadow. He was just always there.
Except at night, when Lucky still persisted in his mysterious ways.
We started calling him a ghost dog because he'd be there and then he wouldn't be there, and we couldn't find any trace of how he got out or how he managed to do what he was doing. He would just vaporize.
As Shelley began to feel better, she became more concerned about Lucky's strange nightly disappearance.
I really was wanting to protect him now. It was bothering me that he was getting out.
So that night, for the first time, they locked Lucky inside the house while they slept. It was only then that the true miracle in Lucky's visit would be revealed.
Lucky?
Next morning, he wasn't there. Immediately, I had a sense, a different sense that day. I was just devastated.
He vanished without a trace. And that was the last we ever saw of him.
There could only be one explanation for this angelic spirit that guided them through their hour of darkness.
I realized that he was off probably helping someone else.
It was like he had a purpose. And when his job was done, he was done. It was time for him to go, and he left. He was just some kind of an angel sent down. That's the only explanation we can come up with.
You know, thousands of dogs and cats are waiting to be adopted at shelters across the country. If you can bring a new friend into your family, why don't you visit your nearest humane society or shelter? You'll be glad you did. I'm Alan Thicke, and I'll see you next time for more miraculous stories.